This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, we are bringing you a great guest from Keystone and Arnold Insurance, Mr. Marcus Harris.
Morning, guys.
What's up, man?
Not a lot. Good morning. Glad to be with you.
Living the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful sunny day in Colorado, so I can't complain.
Hey, I'll take a sunny day any day, except when it's like 137 degrees, like it has been down here the last couple of weeks. I think that's like one of the biggest, and Kyle probably backed me up on this. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about Florida is that it's just like incredibly hot all the time. It really isn't. I feel like, we're going to hit in the 80s, 90s on a regular basis. But this summer and part of last summer, it's been ridiculous. Like we've had times where it's been well over 100 degrees for no reason whatsoever. So
have we talked about the highest ever recorded temperature in Tampa? Did we talk about that?
No. Do you know that?
I do know that. Do you have a guess?
Interested.
I'm going to say the highest recorded temperature ever in Tampa is 113 degrees.
Oh,
I'll go 108.
It's actually 99. It's never been over 100 degrees, but like the heat index from the humidity has caused it to be over that. But the actual temperature has never reached 100 degrees. I was baffled by that.
Yeah, no, I am too. But I mean, you're right though. It is. It's the feels like. And what's crazy is like you can go down to Key West. And it's usually 5 to 10 degrees colder, even though you're going further south because of the way the breeze blows across.
Right. Yeah. It feels cooler. So out in Hawaii, it was like, it didn't really get too much over like 84, 85 degrees, but it still felt hot. Like the breeze was money, but it wasn't like a humid, it wasn't like it is here, in Tampa. It wasn't like sticky and wet. It was just hot.
Yeah.
So,
I've never been to Hawaii. I don't know, Marcus, you been to Hawaii?
I have, and I will agree with that. I mean, it's Hawaii lived up to the hype for me. My wife and I finally went last summer, and it is what people say it is. It was.
What island you go to?
Hold on, I do have a question. Can I ask you a personal question? When you came back, were you wearing a wrist bracelet? A gold wrist bracelet? Because I noticed Kyle now is wearing jewelry on his arm, and I've never noticed that about him before.
Dude, I got this before that. You just haven't seen me since then.
You had to have that to go there. Your wife bought it for you to match her bum bag.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
What island did you go to?
We were on Oahu, and specifically like Ko'olina area was where we stayed, and then we kind of were all over the place. Went up to North Shore for a little while. I was hoping to surf, but
I was wondering about that. So we went to Maui, right? I just got back like on Saturday.
Awesome.
But so I was wondering where the surfing was because Oahu's the big island, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So I mean we did like all the I think it is because Waikiki's where Honolulu is and all that sort of thing. So
there you go. Yeah.
That makes sense because like all the waves around Maui, it looked like the Gulf or, maybe the Atlantic. Like none of them were, we went around the whole island too. Like there wasn't big waves. They were like a max of 3 feet, which I was like, I pictured there was going to be people surfing all over the place, but I guess it's just on the different islands.
Yeah. No, I think we were on a good surf island. It looked like a blast. I was really, really bummed, and I still kind of made the best out of it, doing a lot of things I shouldn't have probably still, but I had broken my wrist, I think the week before. So I was pretty bummed. And
Not
I
ideal.
probably, if I wasn't married to a much smarter person than I probably still would have tried to like get out there with a wrist brace on, which would have been a disaster.
Just put a plastic bag on it and just make it happen.
Yeah. So,
I think when I was a kid, like that was bucket list for me. I really don't know why, because I don't
surfing?
think just going to Hawaii, because you always saw the massive waves at like Waimea Bay and some of those places.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know why it was bucket list. I think it was probably because I didn't realize how incredibly dangerous it would have been if I actually got there, because I'm the idiot that would have I wouldn't have surfed. I would have used a boogie board and would have been pulverized on a coral reef.
So,
as soon as the
and
waves
they pop
crashed
out of nowhere, man. It's like we were right there on the beach and you walk 30, 40 yards out and there was just a reef right there. I was swimming. I've got to show you this video. I was swimming with the two giant sea turtles. They were chilling all day. I just put my phone under the water and they're just right there hanging out, eating algae. But the reef that just pops up out of nowhere. So I could see how surfers would just get absolutely smashed on and the current too. That's the other thing. Yeah. It's not like it is here or even in the Atlantic. Like it sucks you out like quickly if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it is in some of the places in the Caribbean, and that caught me by surprise, because we went down to St. John a few years ago, and
especially because it's more shallow down there.
Yeah, we hired a captain with that had a boat to take us around to the British Virgin Islands, and went to some cool spots down there, but specifically to snorkel and stuff. And I got out to snorkel, and I mean, I'm not a great swimmer anymore, but I used to be a really strong swimmer. I mean, I swam on swim teams and stuff in the past. So
that you did.
Now I look more like a manatee when I get in the water and I just sort of float. But I got out and went to snorkel, and it blew me away how quickly the current carried me, like way out past the boat, like to the point you had to do some work to get back to where you needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, we could talk about vacation destinations
I'm great
all day long.
Yeah.
Before we get cranked up, Marcus, how about just a little backstory for everybody listening so they know who you are and kind of what your story is and what you're doing?
Sure. Well, so I work with Arnold Insurance. We're a family owned agency, and my grandfather actually started our company 51 years ago as of this summer. In a little tiny railroad town in Missouri called Scott City. My mom, my dad, my aunt are still in the business and very heavily involved. Since we are on a Power Producer podcast, my dad and my aunt are actually our top two producers within our agency, which is pretty fun. I mean, that's not I think that's just happened. They're great at their job. And so I consider myself very lucky to have family that's actually, fantastic at what they do in our family company. My mom would never take the credit for it, but she is really in the backbone of our growth and built out the back end side of it, all the financial ins and outs and the systems and processes that none of us ever like to think about or talk about. She has talked about and thought about. Yeah. She's great at it. So, so we've got that side of it as well. And then my background kind of is in marketing. I started a marketing company out of college and wasn't a great student at all. I actually went to college to play football, and I didn't realize that I was supposed to also go to class. So, there was a
I resemble that remark.
Seriously,
there was a news flash for me pretty quickly of like, oh, okay, well, I got to do both things here. So college didn't last that long, which I was pretty bummed about because I loved playing football, but and I was having a great year, or I had a great freshman year, and then they were like, well, yeah, you didn't go to class, so that's a problem. So I actually was just stubborn enough I was like, well, I'll just jump into the workforce. And so I started a marketing company when I was 22 and had no idea what I was doing, had no money, had no business savvy whatsoever, just kind of overly confident that I could do something that I had seen a couple times. And so did that for a long time. Our family's company was one of my clients. After a while, my dad took some selling on that. He was not at all on board with me just getting the opportunity, because he's like, you don't know what you're doing. I know for a fact that you don't know what you're doing, so I'm not hiring you. And so that's my background. And then I got into the agency 4 years ago officially. And yeah, I came in just as a producer. I came in to just build a book. And my dad and my grandfather before him really modeled the leadership of our agency as, you got to know what you're talking about if you're going to hope to lead others to do it well. And so so that was really the emphasis for me, was if I want to, I guess, carry the torch at some point, then I need to probably have something to stand on. And so I've been building the book. I, in the last year, moved to a management position over our group we call the associate producers, basically anybody under that validation line. I am their guru and best friend and worst enemy at times. And so, that's my day to day. Outside of that, man, I live out here in Denver, love to play in the mountains, play a lot of golf, and my game does not reflect it. And I'm married to my college sweetheart, and she is awesome, and keeps me in line. So, yeah.
You know what, man? If you'd have worried about studying and playing football, you might not have met her. So I'd say college ended up being a success, right?
That's right. That's what I tell people. Yep, absolutely.
So you and I are probably actually the same guy, Marcus, to be honest with you, because it's very, very similar. Yeah. Talk a little bit about your marketing company, man. What's the story with that? Like, what were you doing? I'm interested because I want to see how that's helped you. And obviously the next migration would be, how did that prepare you for what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah, no. It's, it certainly did. I mean, when I started it, it started out actually as a video production company. So I loved the concept of telling stories through video. And again, had very little technical skill. And what I did have was very self-taught, but being in the Midwest, I was in this section of the country at the time that I think was just getting into the modern marketing, was starting to really, accept it. And so a lot of these small businesses that have been around for maybe 30, 40 years are a company similar to my agency that I'm in now. They had a great product, they had a great brand. They just didn't know how to stay relevant with it, how to keep engaging with the newer customer and compete in those spaces that are being moved into by every other, major brand on a local level. And so I started doing video, and then, people were like, great, man, this video is awesome. We love it. We feel like it captures who we are. What do we do with it? And so I was like, well, I don't know. That's not my job. You guys are supposed to figure it out. But then I started realizing I was leaving money on the table by saying that. So I was like, well, I know about social media probably more than you do. So why don't we use social media? So then I started putting together some, retainers where I would start producing content for people on a regular basis. And I just had a natural, I don't mean that like pompous. I just was able to catch on to graphic design and just design in general. I was able to put stuff together that looked good. I mean, or at least good enough. I don't know if it was actually good, but it was, people were willing to pay for it. And so I was doing social graphics and all that stuff. And then again, kind of the domino effect, people were like, hey, great, this is awesome. You've helped us tell our story. You've helped us connect with an audience. Now, where do we, cash in on it? Where are we driving all this traffic? Because people's websites were outdated. I mean, there were at that time, I think not a lot of people.
And when was this? How long ago was this?
So this would have been nearly 10 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah. So at that time, I think, people were that, again, if you were a business, I think a lot of startups at that time understood it because that's how they were deciding to get their brand out there. But the people that had,
well, not to mention the fact it was cost effective for them to get their brand out too, right?
Right. Like, and I think that was a lot of education that people didn't have. Yeah.
I'm the same way, man. I mean, I say this all the time. I was literally talking to this with a new scratch agency owner this morning when we were just talking about how to get content out and in front of people. Yeah. And I just told him, I said, I'm consistent. Like I'm always just nonstop, boom, boom, boom. And part of that's because I've always got a bank of stuff that we're recording and having ready ahead of time. So it's always ready to go out. And we use scheduling software and things to make sure that it's automated to a certain degree. But the moral of the story is, if you have a message and you take the time to educate people selflessly, and it's not about you, it's not about getting a sale, it's just literally, here's something you can do right now that will either A, help you with your total cost of risk if you're a business owner, or here's a way that you can close deals, open doors, here's how you have the conversation, whatever else. If you do it just only because you want to give back and you educate people, your audience will find you and you will write business as a result of that. And what I mean by that is, I get probably 2 or 3 messages it's not weekly, but monthly, from CFOs or controllers of companies from all over the country that say, David, we follow your content. We like the way you do business. We don't get treated this way. We would love to know if you're able to represent us in our state, or if you aren't, there's an agent in your network who operates the way you do. Do you have somebody here that could come represent us? Right. And it's like, this is content. It's not designed for CFOs or controllers. It's literally 100% sales-based tactics for insurance agents, but it's finding the right people. Imagine what that would do if it was focused content on what people really are thirsting for and searching for. You blow up. And I think that's why a lot of people do it. It's not hard. It's really, quite honestly, easy. You don't have to be great at it. You just have to show up every single day. And even when we started this podcast, I got really good advice from my friends, Bradley Flowers and Scott Howell. And they said, David, whatever you do 50 episodes. Don't stop until you do 50. If you get to 50, you're going to be good. And Bradley tells the story. The first month Insurance Guys had their podcast, they got 8 downloads. 8. Oof. That's it. Right? And now they have a massive podcast in our space. We blew through 50 episodes relatively quickly. And I mean, that was sage advice, but really it's the same thing as saying, show up every day, be consistent. The cadence that we have in our marketing and the messaging that we get out is equally, if not more important than the message itself.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that was, we preached a lot of big things in my company to our clients. It was quality, consistency, and uniformity. I mean, I think when we looked at people's brands, if you could abide by those 3 things in everything you did, or the approach that you had to everything, then it was usually a recipe for success. And I think you're right. Consistency is usually the thing that's the hardest. People get busy, people get tired of, running the race. And I think I love the idea of just setting a number like, hey, we're going to get there. And I think the selfish thing that people don't realize, whether we're talking about social media marketing, whether we're talking about a podcast, or we're talking about writing a book, whatever, I think marketing, the magic sauce that like I love about it is when you get engaged in producing content and like you said, giving back to the audience of information and whatever, that connecting with them on what you're putting out, it excites you about what you do. Like, I think you get this selfish take out of it that is, it's going to produce better work in you. There's accountability in that. I think there's new ideas that come to life because you're forcing yourself to get out of your daily routine and create. And I think that's the beauty of, creating in general. That's why I'm drawn to it for sure.
So how's that transitioned over to the insurance world?
Yeah, no. And I'll tell you guys, looking back, I was very, I had sworn off being in insurance. I mean, especially at that age, I was like, insurance sounds awful. Like, I mean, who wants to be in insurance? And then on top of that, I was like, I don't want to join the family business. I don't want to work for family for the rest of my life. None of the boxes were checked for me originally.
Had you ever been involved like in the office before that, like in gotten some sort of taste of it and you're like, nah, or was it just like something that it was in your head just because
Both. Yeah, both. I think I had created a mythological version of it a little bit. And then also right out of college, before I started the marketing company, I worked as like a summer intern at our oldest office in Scott City. And I think I answered phones and, filed papers. I did nothing. They didn't give me any responsibility on purpose, but and that was a smart choice at that time for sure. But yeah, no, I think that taste in my mouth wasn't a good one, but I don't think I was also looking to, I wasn't looking for it to be either. And so I swore it off. And then I remember when my dad kind of approached me, and really his reasoning was, hey, I want somebody to pass the torch to, and I want to work with, my dad and I are very close, which is something I consider to be just one of my biggest blessings, is that dad and I, we work together really well. We do everything together really well. I mean, it's a guy I wouldn't say no to doing anything with in life. And so I know that's not always the case, especially with family that works together or father and son relationships. And so that's awesome. But he came to me and was like, hey, here's the proposal. And where he really got me was he knew my wife. My wife grew up here in Denver. He knew she wanted to be back home. And he was like, hey, listen, why don't we open a Denver office? Because Denver's a great market to be in. And so after that, once my wife got wind of that, it was kind of it was probably a done deal. But I realized, to your point of how the marketing side kind of tied in, it's all problem solving for people. That's all it is. Like, it's all creating deep relationships and then helping them navigate the problem solving process, whether that was a website or whether that's a policy. 90% of my day isn't that different. And I know that sounds very bizarre, but like, sure, the wheel I'm turning behind the scenes is a very different thing at this point. But the thing that I get up excited to do today really doesn't have anything to do with insurance or have anything to do with marketing before. It's about the people I connect with and the relationships I build and that kind of stuff.
The insurance itself is boring.
100%. I don't know anybody. I mean, maybe you guys, you do this a lot, but
there's like maybe one or two people that like actually, that I've heard speak that are like, I love forms. I love insurance contracts. Like, and I really
like Doug Benz. Doug Benz made one of the greatest comments ever when I was talking to him about somebody, and he said, "Now listen," he goes, "I'm going to warn you about this guy. He's really into the policy forms and things. In fact, I believe he takes ISO forms with him to the beach for a little light reading."
Was that on the pod? I feel like I've heard that before.
It may have been.
Maybe I just heard the story.
I think I told you the story at a bare minimum. But I mean, is coverage important? Yes. Does coverage is it boring? Yes. Like, we have to know it. We have to be good at it, but we don't have to talk about it. Yeah. And I really don't think our clients want us talking about it.
No, it's not going to make a difference. I mean, it's not going to make them like want to deal with you more or understand what you're talking about. It's going to be like, oh, okay, great. This guy has an understanding. That's enough.
Yeah. Same scratch agency I was talking to earlier. I told him, he said, I want to make sure I don't have an E&O. And I said, well, you don't need to worry about coverage for that. You need to look at your backroom operations for that. I said, your E&O is rarely, I think, truthfully, and look, plenty of people are going to think that I'm wrong about this, but I think that we focus so much on E&O being a coverage issue as opposed to a process issue that our focus is wrong. Because if you think about it, man, realistically, it's pretty tough to get E&O on coverage, right? Because your underwriter is going to cover their rear end and they're going to explain it to you. You have to ask the right questions to make sure you understand the exposures and that you put the applications and things together. But most applications at this point are coming with supplementals that your client's answering for you. And you need to look at your forms that are on the list of forms and everything at the beginning of the quote to make sure that there's nothing there. But I think more people get bit because they didn't have a rejection form signed, or, they didn't offer, or they offered and it's not documented, and all of the things that the agency management system does and everything else. And I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I really prefer to operate out of HubSpot in our agency, but we're down some help right now. So I've had to be in Hawksoft more than I normally would. And I can tell you, I have a much greater appreciation for all of the automatic documentation that happens when you go into an agency management system. I used to look at it like probably every producer on the face of the earth would look at it. Bane of my existence. It's a nightmare to go in. It's difficult to navigate. And I'm not saying, for all my friends at Hawksoft, I'm not talking about your product. I'm saying agency management systems in general, when compared to the interface of a CRM like a Salesforce or a HubSpot, it's just a completely different experience. Okay. Yeah. So it's not fair for me to compare the two of those. But the fact that I have a system that every time I do anything at all in there is logging to prove that I've done that we can put our email in is another place to safeguard, because we've already got it in the CRM, and it's doing that with relative ease. I have completely changed my perception on that. Like I was of the mindset that I could probably go ahead and just have a CRM only and never need an agency management system. And then I realized how much auto documentation and things are happening. Not going to do that. We don't really have double entry anyhow, so it's not a big deal. And I'd rather have a really good agency management system that my team can use that's functional, and a really good CRM system that they can use. I'm not trying to find a marginal product that marries both, because everything that's out there right now can't meet our needs as an agency. And I've got a lot of good friends in InsurTech, and I've told them the same thing. Middle market commercial is a different animal when it comes to this stuff. And so I don't know that we'll ever have a solution. I mean, Applied and Vertafore are doing everything they can to try and create that through acquisition and everything else. I just don't know that we'll ever get there.
Yeah, it's really funny you bring this up, because me and our CSO yesterday, we went into a long conversation yesterday afternoon, because we have, I feel like, had the same conversation or a version of it for the last 2 years on how to perfect the exclusion form process for our clients, and to protect ourselves, essentially. I mean, that's really why we want to do it. But also we want to use it as a rounding out the account sales tool a lot of times too. What we keep coming back to is it's never, no matter what system we put in place. And I agree with you that anytime it hasn't worked, it's about the system. It's not about the coverage that was put in place. But any time that's the case, I think it has to start with who the producer. If this is your account, you need to care more about it enough to finish the job. And I think that's where we struggle, because I mean, I say that as a producer, and then out of the other side of my brain, that's not a manager, I'm like, yeah, but I know this guy, I've got a good relationship with him, I don't have time for that, whatever, all those other things that are in your head as well. But I think that's what we're trying to drive home with our producers is, hey, you gotta finish the job. You gotta protect us, protect the agency, protect yourself. And then you've also got to, take the opportunity to truly educate your client, make sure they know what they have. You're protecting their livelihood. Right. And, so it's a hard thing though. Like I said, we've been talking about it for 2 years, and we're still talking about it. We're still trying to figure it out. It's rounding that out. And the E&O conversation, the exclusion form conversation is a tough one.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was just interested in, so we talked about kind of what led you into where you are now, but, kind of what was, obviously, I think your perception was one thing, and then it changes over time like it does with anything. But what was something that you learned along the way, like maybe your biggest takeaway from going from owning your own company and then transitioning into the family business?
Wow. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think working with family, and again, I know this probably wouldn't be true for everybody, but I'm blessed to have the family that I'm talking about be really great. It's very rewarding. Like when the people you're winning with are your blood, it's really fun. So I think that's awesome. Like when I get to, when we're celebrating a great month or a great year and I'm high-fiving my mom and dad, it's awesome, and I know some people wouldn't view it that way, but I love that. And then, on top of it, I think along those same lines of winning, I underestimated, how much of a winning addict I was. I really love, and again, I'm not just talking about making sales. Obviously that's a big part of it. But man, I just love feeling like we're moving the ball down the field, and insurance is an industry that gives you an opportunity to do that daily at least, and so I think that's what I love about this more than maybe what I was doing before or some of the other industries I hear about. man, I wake up in the morning and we use this phrase a lot in our agency, put your mouthpiece in. Like that's I love that feeling. I love getting up in the morning and hey, let's get to it. And so I think I underestimated maybe how much opportunity there was going to be to scratch that itch in this industry. And then the people, I think, is the other thing. I thought all of you guys that are in insurance are awful. I thought, who wants to spend time with you all? And I know I'm throwing my own family in that bus, I guess, as well. But that's been probably the most pleasant surprise. We talk about Keystone, we talk about some of these events we've done. I mean, David, the Vegas, I've created some fantastic friendships and met some brilliant people that I'm incredibly thankful to insurance, for those introductions and those opportunities. It's awesome.
Talk a little bit about your involvement with Keystone, man, because you and I rubbed shoulders briefly
right.
when I was there in Vegas. And I've made a lot of friends just out of that one emerging leaders thing. I mean, Alan Stein Jr. was there, and he and I go back and forth all the time now, plus all of the really cool agents that are there. And I think, for me, I like going to those things. It's kind of a weird thing, man, because I'll talk to anybody. It's kind of why we do what we do, right?
Right.
And I don't mind getting up in front of a big room and sharing what I've learned and what I know, because it's what I know. It's not like I'm trying to study for a cram for a test or whatever. I mean, this is the stuff I do every day. But I think that there's a general perception that I've picked this up. It kind of makes me feel weird that I'm unapproachable because I'm the guy that was just up there speaking, and all of a sudden, I'm held in a different regard, and that's not who I am, man. That's something that I make sure that I do my very best. That's a myth that I dispel as quickly as possible, really before I ever show up. So like when one of the people from the Big I in a different state or whatever will ask me if I'm willing to come present, I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to come present. I can't wait. Love to meet new people. We have a mobile podcasting rig now. I usually bring that and record on site so I can help them market for the next conference, but as well as get people on who have cool stuff to talk about while we're there. It creates some buzz in the event. I'll take my book and hand it out to the attendees so that they can get a copy of my book and talk about that. But I'm always present at all of the events, and I guess I'm just one of the guys, man. I guess there are people who just show up, talk for an hour, and leave. I mean, that's what Alan did.
Yeah,
that's why Alan has a lot more money than I do, I guess. But maybe
he was at another event by dinner.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Dude, he like literally last week I was looking at something he posted on social. He was like 3 different cities in way different parts of the country in 2 days.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that some of that's attributed to his basketball background of those guys always being on the go anyway. So I think he's probably got a comfort level there that's abnormal. But no, and David, to compliment you, I mean, I think anybody that I know, the Keystone folks that mention you, Stephen, Melanie, Christian, Katie, all these folks that know you through the Keystone Emerging Leaders conference, that I've talked to them about you, and they don't talk to you about you as a speaker, an author, a podcast. They talk to you about you like you're their friend. Like, hey, I that they know you on a personal level. So if that is your aim, I think you've hit it.
Mission accomplished. My work here is finished.
Create real relationships. I think you're doing it. But yeah, Keystone. I mean, and I promise, I literally did not plan this, but Keystone, if nothing else, has given me a nice coffee mug. But Keystone's been great for us. I mean, I know we were actually a part of a conglomerate for a weird stint a few years back in Missouri, and that's how we kind of got introduced to the idea of Keystone, was through that group. And we didn't really know, like, pridefully a little bit, I think, because we've really come up and built this thing in rural Missouri, is our roots. We have no business kind of being the size that we are, or being doing what we've done. I mean, people in a town of 50,000 people don't do that, right? And so that's where we started. And so I think there was a little bit of maybe skepticism at first, like, we're doing just fine. What do we need these guys for that don't know us, from Pennsylvania? That what are they going to do for us? but I think we were quickly corrected on that of like, man, there is a ton they can do for us. I mean, from a resource standpoint, things like emerging leaders, the national conference coming up here in September, I was texting a couple of the folks that'll be there from other agencies across those are folks over your way. And I've learned so much. I mean, the workshopping that you get to do with other people, I think we didn't know how valuable that is, where you get to sit and talk about ideas. And again, some of those are really bad ideas. Some of those people you hear and you're like, you're doing what? But then it reminds you of like, okay, well, this is what we do. This is why we do it. And then some of those people are pointing out stuff you're doing and you're like, yeah, I don't know why we're doing what we're doing. And so I think, that side of it has been valuable. The carrier relationships. I mean, just feeling like you've got a strong backbone behind you in Keystone. Carriers are big animals, right? And so like, in the grand scheme of things, we're just a little tiny guy in Missouri compared to these names that we represent and work with on a daily basis. And I think Keystone gives us a little bit more leverage in the marketplace in that regard, which is good. And then lastly, I think it has helped our people internally. It's constantly presenting opportunities for us to educate and add value to them and help keep them healthy. I mean, our biggest thing, and you all know this, you've heard this a lot for sure in the last, couple of years, is, people are your most valuable asset, right? And we all know that. But what do you do? How do you make it, show them that they're valued? Well, we've always had the ideology that healthy people do healthy work and healthy work produces healthy clients, right? And so how do you keep your people healthy? And part of that is stuff that Keystone helps us do, is pouring into those people with education, with opportunities, with lightening the load on workload. I mean, even that's something Keystone can do for us in different ways. And so, yeah, we're definitely grateful to be in the Keystone circle.
What would you say the biggest advantage Keystone that you've received by being in Keystone?
Honestly, I think perspective is an easy way to put it. I think like because we were in this little tiny part of the country in our own little world, how in the independent space do you get perspective on what you should be doing, or if what you're doing is working, or if you're on the right track, or are you actually growing at the rate you think you are? Do you have the right people in the right seats? And so I think Keystone probably gave us a look into the bigger picture. And the only way, I don't know any other way that we could have. I mean, I think Keystone, that was probably the biggest takeaway for us, is we have context to how we're doing and why we think we're doing that well or need work in that area. It's because Keystone's given us that.
Absolutely. So your college career is similar to mine, probably did not take nearly as long to wrap up as what mine did. I mean, I followed the Tommy Boy plan. I usually mention that when I speak.
Good.
But
lots of people go to school for 8 years.
Yeah, they're called doctors.
Shut up, Richard.
Shut up, Richard.
Yeah. What's the biggest? What do you think the biggest challenge was when you moved into the independent agency channel? I think that's a great question to ask people, because we all experience different things. And I think that's one of the things that's valuable for people listening, is the perspective of guys like you who came from something completely different. And I think it's a great question. I think the biggest challenge, everything I said earlier about, it being similar is true, but then on the other side, to your point, you got to know your stuff, right? And because the higher you get up in the food chain, the bigger clients you start sitting down with, the more they can smell the BS if it's there. And so you do got to know your stuff. We start we're very aggressive in our growth. We start a lot of guys that aren't from the industry, that are young, all of the above. And the biggest learning curve they have is sitting down with guys that know more about insurance than them. Their client could, tell them what they need better than they could tell them what they need. And so
I think that was a big thing for me too, of like, okay, I'm not going to be able to just wing this all the time. I think that was a thing I had to like realize. I need to prep. I need to do my homework before I know I need to do my homework a little bit. And then, not being scared. I think that's a big thing. I mean, sales in general, like if you can be intimidated by a sale, then it's going to be tough, and so one of the biggest things, going back to the mouthpiece, saying for us is, man, the first thing we want to get you numb to is being told no, is being smacked around a little bit. And so I think that was the same for me. And I consider myself somebody that's not scared of, talking to people or anything like that. But man, you go into a room with a guy that pays 6 figures in premium and he can see right through you. You can feel it, you can feel like, oh boy, what am I doing here? I've swam too deep into the water. And so, getting over that was a big thing, I think, for sure. And then, everybody I compete against, I mean, I won't, I guess, name ages because I don't think in 22 you're supposed to do that anymore. But I'm younger than most of the people I compete against, especially, again, if you're going after bigger stuff. And so I had to get over that. Like I had to get over, like, hey, just because the guy has a kid your age doesn't mean anything,
That's a very valid thing, though. I mean, I dealt with the exact same thing. It's in the intro to the podcast.
Yeah. And I think it's, I view it as an advantage, and again, I don't, and this isn't to group age groups into the same, stereotype at all. But listen, the reality is our industry is an old gray-haired industry a lot of times. And again, there's some old gray-haired guys that'll kick your tail. So it's not to say that they're all not working, but a lot of them are on the golf course. And so I had to realize that too. A lot of them, I'm like, oh, I just need to show up and work really hard today, and I got this, because that guy's not clocking in today, or that guy's not answering his phone. He's sending it to his assistant. So when in a relationship, I got it, and so I think that was part of it. I think was, realizing that maybe that age gap isn't a bad thing. And I try and tell all of our young guys that, hey, just out hustle everybody.
I think you might have just answered the question I was getting ready to ask, but I was gonna say, what's your best piece of advice for somebody? I think you just nailed it right there. Is just show up.
Yeah, and we've all heard this, whether it's in this industry or not. Like, but we preach it still very hard. If you want to live like nobody else for the next 50, live like nobody will for the next 5. And 5 years isn't that long. Like it sounds long maybe if today's your first day at the office, but it's not that long. And so we really try and tell those guys that. I'm like, listen, if you can establish habits, and we preach activity to producers over everything. Like, hey, if you can make this many asks, if you can get this many submissions, if you can get, then eventually the ball's going to go out of the park. Like eventually you're going to hit what you're aiming at. And so
honest to God, man, that's such a valid analogy, right? Even if somebody's throwing 100 miles an hour, if you keep getting in the cage and the machine's throwing 100 miles an hour, you're eventually going to figure out your timing. Then you're going to make some contact. Then you're going to start hitting BBs.
Yeah, or at least a dinker up the middle that still gets me to first. So either way,
right.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a big that was a big challenge for me, and I think it's a challenge for a lot of our guys. But we. I think too, we try and tell guys, my dad, who is our top producer and our CEO, which is a unicorn in itself, but he still lives by that. Like he started his career that way 25 years ago and still runs at that pace. And he would tell you that's why he makes a lot of money and produces a lot of money, is because he just works more hours. Hey, I just have more conversations. He says that, and I love it. It gets me fired up. He'll get on the call with our producers, especially our young guys, and he'll just be like, "You guys have no shot against me. Like if you're competing against me, there's no chance, because I'm just going to make more calls than you today. Like I'm just going to have more meetings. I'm going to get up earlier. I'm going to go to sleep later. Like, and at the end of the day, we went down to the sales strategies with Keystone in San Antonio, and there was this panel of a lot of nice little niche approaches and things. And Dad, I loved it. It was like the $1 million, panel thing or whatever. And he said, yeah, I don't really have a secret sauce. My secret sauce is I show up and work hard every day, and I keep writing business. That's how that works.
I mean, but here's the thing, man. And I've said this probably 100 times on the podcast. It's no different than when I got into the industry. out of being in grocery for as long in retail. I was working 100 hours a week. I knew how to work hard. Right. And I came in and I worked 50 hours a week. I felt like I was on vacation and I was working twice as hard as my competition. They'd be out playing golf. I'm answering my phone or dialing for dollars. They're at happy hour. I'm at the office waiting for their client to call me with the question they can't answer. So, it really is. And people say all the time, my buddy Jason Cass says on his podcast, what's more important, luck or skill? I think we make our own luck, man, by working hard. I mean, I worked with a guy one time who made the comment, luck's only necessary in the absence of skill, right? But I think you make your own luck by just being there. People say being in the right place at the right time, but just being present, period. Right. You make more money.
Yeah, no. And KEP had their top salesman as of this point in the year shared like a case study. I think it was last week actually. And he gave some really great advice in that call to all the producers over there. Was maybe 80 folks on there. And he said, hey, just be visible, be ready. Because eventually the opportunity shows up if you're consistently there. And, I think a lot of people think, you do need to get aggressive and go ask for business for sure. Or else it won't just show up. But I think people a lot of times can undervalue like how valuable is being involved in this network or this network or like this event or this referral group, like being the guy that shows up there. I've seen that so true out here in Denver. I moved out here with no network. I moved out here with nobody. That was intimidating. I mean, I was like, how am I going to get into this place? I don't know anybody, especially coming from a small town where I know everybody. Like I played football in our hometown and, that still was, getting me some, free meals 10 years later. So, because and so I think out here I was intimidated by that, but gosh, all I had to do was just be the most consistent guy, show up at the breakfast every time, show up at the meeting every time.
And I think people do it for a period and then it maybe not, doesn't produce any fruit like right away and people run out of patience and they end up quitting right before it pays off. And I would imagine that happens a lot more than people realize.
Yeah. Well, and I think, go ahead, dude.
No, go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, I think to simplify the whole question before about the, like, what advice and what advice did I need? What was the learning curve? I think you realize that you weed out a ton of your competition by stuff that's very much in your control. And when you get to a certain level, yes, you're going to get beat by guys that can hit the ball better than you. Like that they just got a skill set that's just different. Right. And so, but you want to be at that level. You want to get to that level where you're getting beat by guys that are 3-hole hitters. I'm pulling out all the baseball analogies at this point, but like,
love it.
Yeah, I know.
By the way, man, there ain't no, there's no, 3. Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
No.
You said 3-hole hitter. You were talking about batting, and I immediately went to first base because that's where I played.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I was going to tell you, there ain't no hole at the 3 spot over there. I can tell.
Lockdown corner. Yeah, no. So I think, I think that's the thing you have to remind yourself too. Is like, hey, I can because insurance is a massive industry, right? I mean, there's guy on every corner. So like, how do you get most of those guys? You get rid of by just being consistent, and then the guys that are left, you're glad to be competing against those guys. That means you're in the right place.
True.
Yeah, I agree. It's I really think like so listen, if you're listening to this podcast right now, what I'm going to say will change your game. I can promise you it will, but you have to do it. One of the reasons why I like engaging with people a month after renewal is because I've got wide open space to play with them, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry. I mean, aside from all of the other things like the lost data being fresh, if the renewal was bad, the client's upset or whatever else. I'm just talking about if you're doing cold call marketing drops and you're working from an X-date list, call on the account that just renewed, call on them the next month and call on them the next month. If you call on them 3 months in a row, you will already have broken down the barrier because they have seen you more since their policy's renewed than their incumbent agent.
Absolutely.
And continue to follow up with them. Nobody's going to say, oh, well, you showed up 3 times to market to me. I've been sitting here waiting to write you a check. How much is it for? That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But that's what's going to start weakening the guard of the gatekeeper. They're going to start having more personal level conversations with you because they're seeing that you're somebody who's not going to go away. And I'm not saying you need to do it in an annoying car warranty, type manner. I'm just saying show up and be consistent in showing up, because Alan even talks about this, Alan Stein, when he talks about the stuff with Kobe Bryant. What made Kobe so good was the fact he embraced the basics every single day. He was at practice early. And I remember it, man. When I played basketball in high school, we had to shoot 100 free throws before we were allowed to leave. Hated it almost as much as I hated suicides, but we had to shoot the free throws.
Yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, what did that really do? Well, it gave me muscle memory so that when I was in a game and had to shoot free throws, I was more likely to make it. But it also taught me the discipline that I have to put in the reps every single time. And I don't have to understand it. I just need to do it because I know that's what I was told to do.
Muscle memory, man.
I had a pretty high free throw percentage.
Yeah.
Probably because I shot 100 times every day before I left practice. Had really good cardio. Probably because we had to do suicides right before we did our free throws, right?
Yep.
Had a pretty decent vertical. I know Kyle doesn't believe that, but had a pretty decent vertical because we did jump box reps every single day.
Yeah.
I
believe the vertical part. I don't think you got a stroke though.
Okay. Well, I can prove the vertical with pictures.
So can I.
I've got it's so true. So I still try and pretend to be an athlete on a regular basis. And I play in a league, basketball league here. We just finished up, may or may not have won the whole thing.
There you go.
Let you decide, but
may or may not have,
Yeah. And so exactly.
Dude, I played in a men's league 4 years ago, almost died.
I know you did.
So out of shape.
I remember.
I was watching these high school kids before finish up a workout before we came in to play that afternoon or that evening or whatever it was. And they're doing the ladder drill. You guys ever do that? Where you're like, and not to draw too deep of a cut here, but I was watching him and I was thinking, well, no wonder at this age, my footwork is atrocious. I'm not as quick. I can't get to the middle of the lane the way I used to. I can't, my defense is, lay defense. If the guy makes one hard move, I'm like, he beat me. And so
help side will get that.
Right, exactly. That's why let's be honest. That's why we're playing zone. And so
I was going to say that's the zone defense's greatest excuses. Help side's got that one.
Absolutely.
Come on, man! You're supposed to rotate down.
Yeah, it was on you. No, it was on you. But I think looking at that guy, I'm like, well, that no wonder. When we did all that kind of we couldn't figure out why we were always having to do stuff like that, the weight training, all the ins and outs of outside of the game. And then we compare it to now, all you do is the game. Well, then no wonder the game is worse, And so, I think it's a point. And I think, as sales in general, I think we remind our guys, it's a muscle you have to work. If you want to get, as good as you can in a sales conversation, you got to try it. You got to go out and do it, because the more you do it, the more comfortable you are. You guys know that feeling. If you close, 5 sales this week, the 6th one is like riding a bike. You're like, oh, dude, I can do this with my eyes closed at this point, because all I've got to do it.
I think too, I was explaining this, my middle son got his learning permit recently. And it's the same thing, man. I remember the first time I drove my parents' car with my dad breathing down my neck and the learner's permit. Right. I also remember the first time I drove my parents' car when nobody was in the car with me, and I was equally as nervous that I was going to do something. But it's amazing to think that there are things like that we do every single day that we take for granted now, but we were petrified the first time we did it. The production game's no different than that same exact feeling. Same thing for me. First time I ever got the ball to pitch in college, right? Talk about
shaking like a leaf.
Yeah.
Talk about your butt puckering. I mean, I'm now playing against a Division I team in a packed stadium with the game relatively on the line. And now they're calling me as a freshman in to come in and clean this thing up. It's like, what? But then 2 years later, wouldn't have thought anything of it.
Right.
And I think guys like us actually enjoy that part of it, right? I like the adrenaline rush that it gives me to know. And I think it's no different, because you have to keep pushing that bar higher and higher and higher, because you become accustomed to the level that you're at. So the $10,000 revenue account's not enough anymore. Oh yeah, 10,000 in revenue, schmevenue. I can go produce a bunch of that. I need something more. Give me 25, give me 50, give me 100, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you stop?
I think my favorite place that I find that is a broker of record. And I think like that going and asking for the business on the relationship is I have to remind myself how much I love that. Like how that's that rush for me, because at the end of the day, if I quote it, it doesn't give me, as much of a rush to get the opportunity. I feel confident in my ability to do that. I work hard enough to build, networks that I have, that business is going to show up. And if I win it on numbers, I win it on numbers, and great, but I did it this week, and I was reminded of it because it kind of been a little bit like I hadn't. Yeah. And I'm like, oh wait, that's the thing that kind of gets you those butterflies a little bit. Because
they're making a decision specifically based on you, not based on any of the other factors like carrier or dividend, and you're asking, or whatever.
And the truth of it is, you're asking them to fire another person just for that reason. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, and you're just saying, hey, listen, and that's how I always say, how much do you love the broker you're with? Like, are you married to him? No? Then why am I not driving the bus here for you? I'm like, I love that question. I mean, it gets me giddy right now. Like you say that to somebody and you just wait. And a lot of times I think you remind yourself, like a lot of times you're like, that's a good question. Let's do it. Like that's the best feeling. And so I agree with you 100%, Dave. I mean, that we all like that. I think we all get into this job for the rush a little bit. You got to love to win, and winning's not.
Well, you have to like to compete, right? You have to like to compete before you can win.
True.
And that's the thing. And you can't be afraid of it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that sell a lot of insurance answering the phone for Progressive and Geico.
Right.
They would drown.
Absolutely.
If they came into our arena, right? Because they're order takers. And it doesn't mean that's not a necessary skill set. Doesn't mean they're bad people, not successful, or whatever else. They just lack the skill set they need to drive business in the environment we play in. And that's a big thing. But I do think love of competition is another, again, we can talk about all the reasons we love what we do, but it's obvious, right?
Right.
So listen, before we wrap up, anything else you wanted to get out to everybody before we stop recording the podcast?
No, I not anything that I think people have to know. I think, I guess something that I think would be worth mentioning, that's maybe unique. And I guess I only say that because I think I've been told that. I don't know that I think it's unique, but because it's all I know. But man, I think getting aggressive with young people in our space is important. And I think, again, not to make it all about age and the difference, but I think insurance is an industry that needs some fresh, hungry blood in it. And so, again, just shine some light on the success we've had in that space. I mean, we have a lot of folks within our agency that are producing books that guys spend a career building, and they're 35, like guys that are swinging at big. I mean, we had one that, he produced, he had what was it? A $80,000 month last month. I mean, and he's 33 or something in that ballpark. In the Boot Hill, Missouri, he's not even Cape. He's in the place that people, call Cape a big city. And so, I think and I say that to say, like, what does that take? And I think it's, man, if I can encourage anybody that has an agency out there that is well established, man, there's people that are looking to build a career underneath you. There's people that are wanting you to lead them in it. And we're super invested in that. We invest our money, our resources, the things we develop technology wise, the new software we're using. It's not for the guy that has 5 years left in his career. We would just let him do what he's been doing. It's for the guy that is just starting. I mean, we just hired three guys that are under 25. I mean, and that's scary. I think most people would say that's foolish, right? Like, why are you doing that? Because those guys know nothing. They're going to get run out of the room. but we're playing the long game. Like we believe that if that guy hustles really hard and learns really well, then by the time that guy's 35, he's doing what most guys have spent a whole career trying to do, because he's gotten to sit under, great mentors and be in an agency that puts him in a position to win. So I don't know what my point is in saying that, outside of just that I think getting aggressive with young, hungry talent in our space is needed. I think if your agency's looking for, a fresh a breath of fresh air, then maybe go grab a college guy and see if you can sell insurance, see what happens, so that's
I think the biggest thing, self-belief, man. Your guy that's in small town Missouri, USA, is out just writing business like nobody's business for no other reason than he believed he could. Like, that's the reason we start. That's what keeps us in the game. So absolutely, my number one piece of advice is, if you believe in yourself and you believe you can, you will, period.
Right. Yep.
Find a way. The people who don't believe in themselves always quit or find an excuse.
Yep. They all lace up just like me. I had a buddy that said that all the time. And when they'd go play a school that was about to, give them the business, he'd tell himself that every game in the locker room. Those guys in those locker room lacing up the same way.
When I pitched, I was nasty, because if it was one of those programs where they thought they were better than us, I'm going sweet chin music first pitch right out of the box to send the message. No questions asked. Yeah. And then the next one, I'm going to hit him with a freaking bender and watch him fall out of the batter's box.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch it break right from their left ear hole, right over the plate every time. And they're scared to death because I buzzed the tower first. But look, man, if you look at the best players ever in Major League Baseball, look at Nolan Ryan. Do you think he was ever intimidated by anybody? And look at the moron Robin Ventura that charged the mound on him and just got absolutely pulverized in front of millions of people, and is the gift that keeps on giving today because it's all over the internet still. I love those memes when it's like the X year anniversary of the time Robin Ventura thought it would be a good idea to charge Nolan Ryan.
Try Nolan Ryan. Yeah. No, I think, man, there's not a guy in this business that's really successful that I've met that doesn't live in their own, like, they create the challenge themselves. They don't believe that there's somebody bigger and badder out there. I mean, that's the way we view it. Like, hey, if you're Gallagher coming up against the Sun account, bring it on. Like, man, you still got to make your coffee in the morning the same way I do and go win this account. So let's go. And so I think, that's the way we approach it is why not us? Why not us to go win that account? Why not us to grow an agency that is bigger than anything else we could have dreamed of, So
you just titled the podcast, Why Not Us, with Marcus Harris. That's a great way to end it, man. Thanks so much. I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to go ahead and wrap up, but really, really appreciate you spending a little bit of time rapping with us this morning. Great episode. Absolutely enjoyed it thoroughly. So wish you nothing but the best, Marcus. Can't wait to turn you into cartoon, man. It's coming.
Thank you, guys. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Catch you soon, man. Take care.
Talk soon. All right.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.